Okay, so what if I told you that, well, for a lot of people, the whole idea of traditional retirement just feels kind of out of reach now.
Hmm.
It's this challenging truth, isn't it? Getting harder to ignore. Especially when you look at things like, rising consumer debt, how hard it is to buy a house.
Yeah, and just the cost of everything going up.
Exactly. It really leaves you wondering, like, is there actually another way, a different path to securing your financial future?
It's a huge challenge, no doubt, and that's exactly what we're diving into today. We're looking at Mark Tilbury's perspective.
Right, the guy who talks about how he kind of escaped the rat race.
That's him, how he got to, well, early financial independence, and he lays out this plan for others to maybe think about. So our mission today is really to dig into those nuggets of knowledge,
Okay.
not just talking about what the problems are, because we kind of know those, but more about how this one person, navigated it all, how he achieved what he calls freedom.
And Mark Tilbury, he definitely doesn't hold back, does he? Right from the start, he claims the system is, in his words, rigged against you.
Yeah, pretty strong statement.
It is. So what's the thinking behind that? Like, where does he even trace that back to? Because I think most people might jump to, I don't know, the job market or maybe big banks.
Right.
But he goes somewhere else, somewhere kind of unexpected, doesn't he?
He really does. He points fingers at the modern school system, says it goes way back to John Rockefeller in 1902.
Rockefeller. Wow, okay.
Yeah. His argument is that it wasn't actually set up to create entrepreneurs or, people who think outside the box. He claims its main goal was to make an army of people that worked hard and didn't ask questions.
Huh. Like cogs in a machine.
Sort of. It's a pretty striking claim, right? That the whole system, with its deadlines and rules, was maybe designed to just funnel people down a certain path, not really encourage them to think independently about, say, money.
It does make you wonder if we're still kind of feeling those effects today.
Exactly. And his big criticism ties right into that.
Which is?
The fact that schools still don't teach, the basic money management, investing, or even building a credit score. He says that's just crazy.
And, he's got a point there. It does make you pause and think.
It really does. Are we actually giving people the tools they need for, the real financial world? And the problems, according to him, they don't just stop at school.
Right, because then you've got to find a job.
Yeah, and he throws out this stat. 70% of jobs never get listed.
70%. Wow.
He emphasizes it's often more about who you know than what you know, which just makes landing a decent job even tougher, adding to that sort of rigged feeling he talks about.
Okay, so school doesn't prepare you. Jobs are hard to find through normal channels.
And then, even if you do get a job, he talks about these, what he calls aggressive credit card companies, sending out those pre-approval letters.
Oh, yeah, everyone gets those.
Right, but often with these, mind-boggling interest rates, he mentions seeing things like 40% interest.
40%?
Yeah,
That's
which is-
huge.
It's insane. And he points out most people don't even really understand what APR, the annual percentage rate, actually means. The real cost of borrowing each year, let alone how to use a credit card responsibly.
So it's easy to fall into a trap.
Exactly. And that lack of understanding, plus how easy it is to get credit, has led to this just staggering consumer debt. He says it's over $15 trillion and rising.
15 trillion.
And then you layer on top of that the current economy, right? He mentions 8.3% inflation, supply chain issues still lingering, record fuel bills, utility costs.
Yeah, it feels relentless.
It makes it very difficult to get ahead and save money. It's like trying to swim upstream almost. Every dollar you earn feels like it gets eaten up before you can even put it aside.
Okay, so hearing all that, the system feeling rigged, the economy working against you,
Yeah.
you feel pretty, overwhelming. Hopeless, maybe?
Yeah, it paints a bleak picture.
But this is exactly where Mark Tilbury's own story kind of offers a way out, or at least a really compelling reason to look for one. His big turning point, his aha moment, it happened somewhere pretty ordinary, didn't it? On a train.
Yeah, exactly. On his commute, he talks about being a 16-year-old apprentice carpenter, earning just $2 an hour.
$2 an hour.
Wow. And out of that, he was paying $15 per week for his train ticket and another $15 to his mom for rent.
Tough.
Yeah. And he remembers just looking around the train carriage, seeing all these other commuters, different ages, but they all just looked miserable. He said he felt sorry for them until he caught his own reflection and realized he had that exact same unhappy expression.
Ouch. So he saw himself in them. And what did he take away from that?
Well, you know that saying, money doesn't make you happy?
Sure.
He kind of challenges that. He thinks that's probably said by someone that has never been broke.
Huh. Interesting take.
For him, the realization was that money certainly gives you freedom. And it was the lack of freedom, that feeling of being stuck, that was causing all the unhappiness he saw and felt on that train.
Okay, so money equals freedom. Lack of money equals lack of freedom equals misery.
That was his conclusion. And what's really key here is his next thought. Without solid financial goals, people just become mindless zombies living for the weekend and never getting ahead.
Oof, that's blunt.
It is. But that realization, that moment on the train, it completely shifted his mindset about money. It turned that feeling of misery into, like, serious motivation.
Right. So, okay, he's got this new clarity, this drive. What did he actually do? He must have come up with some practical strategies.
Absolutely. The first big one he talks about is something he calls the 25X rule, or his freedom figure.
Freedom figure. Okay, tell me about that.
So this is kind of foundational for him. He says, first, you need to picture your perfect life. Not like crazy rich necessarily, but your actual ideal life.
Right, what you genuinely want.
Exactly. Then you figure out roughly what that lifestyle would cost per year.
Okay.
And then you multiply that annual cost by 25.
Multiply by 25. Why 25?
Because that number, your freedom figure, is the amount you'd need to have saved and invested so you could live off it by withdrawing just 4% each year.
Ah, the 4% rule. Got it.
Yeah. And the power of this, he says, isn't just the math. It's making that dream that someday into a concrete number, a real target you can aim for. He said it really put things into perspective for him.
I can see how that would be huge. Instead of just vaguely saving for retirement, you have an actual number to hit. That must have changed how he approached things day to day.
Immediately. It kicked off this intense period of discipline and tracking. He started working way more hours, over 12 hours sometimes, for double his usual rate.
While his friends were doing what?
He contrasts it with his friends who just worked their 9-to-5 job and then went down the pub.
So serious hustle.
Serious hustle. And crucially, he started tracking everything. All income and outgoings with a pad and pen, he says, though obviously he mentions you can use apps now.
Sure.
But that detailed tracking, it let him see exactly where every penny was going, so he could channel more towards that freedom figure goal.
Makes sense. But I imagine it wasn't all just smooth sailing from there.
Yeah.
Did he hit any roadblocks?
Oh, yeah, definitely. He talks about a pretty major financial setback. It actually crippled him for a bit, financially speaking.
What happened?
He'd bought this green Volkswagen Golf on a high-interest loan, and then the engine blew up.
Oh, no.
Yeah, left him with a $1,200 bill he couldn't really afford, on top of the loan payments he still had to make.
Yikes. How'd he handle that?
That pushed him to learn about debt management, specifically the debt avalanche method.
Debt avalanche. Okay, refresh my memory on that.
Sure. So you make the minimum payments on all your debts, but then any extra cash you have, you throw all of it at the debt with the absolute highest interest rate first.
Ah, right. Tackle the most expensive debt first.
Exactly. Once that one's paid off, you take all the money you were paying on it, minimum plus extra, and add it to the payment for the next highest interest debt. And so on.
Like an avalanche gathering snow.
Precisely. He said it saved him a fortune in interest in the long run. It took him about a year to fully recover from the car situation, but he actually says he's kind of thankful for those hard lessons. They really taught him the true cost of borrowing money.
Wow. Okay, so he learned about discipline, tracking, tackling debt, but then there was another shift, right? More of a mindset thing. About the whole idea of retirement.
Yes. This was huge for him. He met a mentor, someone in his field who completely reframed the goal, didn't call it retirement, called it freedom.
Freedom, which connects right back to his train revelation.
Exactly. It resonated so deeply with him. He says he'd always chased freedom over materialistic things like cars and flashy stuff. So reframing retirement as freedom just clicked. It connected his financial goals directly to what he really wanted deep down. It wasn't about stopping work someday. It was about having choices now or as soon as possible. It shifted from being about an endpoint to being about a state of being.
That's powerful. Less about escaping something old, more about achieving something desirable.
Totally. And with that freedom goal crystal clear, he really doubled down on long-term investing. That became like a cornerstone.
What did that look like practically?
He started small but consistent, investing 10% of his standard wage into a pension account.
Okay, like a workplace pension.
Yeah, or he mentions the modern equivalents like a Roth IRA if you're in the US or stocks and shares ISA in the UK. Basically, these accounts that let your investments grow mostly tax-free.
Right, taking advantage of tax benefits.
Crucially, it shifted his focus from just earning money to having money produce more income. He really grasped the power of compounding over time, letting your money work for you.
Makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And alongside investing, he had another key realization, didn't he? Something about value.
Yes, another big insight. He realized you're not paid based on how much effort you put into a job.
Okay, so what are you paid for?
He says you're purely paid on the value that you provide.
Ah, okay. So less about hours worked, more about impact delivered.
Exactly. As a young apprentice carpenter, his value was, frankly, limited. He was doing basic tasks, and he was, as he puts it, easily replaceable.
Right.
Understanding that made him think differently about his career. It wasn't just about showing up and working hard anymore.
So how did that change his actions?
It pushed him to actively improve in other areas, to consciously find ways to increase his value beyond just the physical labor. This eventually led him to win something called the Wiltshire Leadership Award.
Okay, so actively building skills, demonstrating leadership, increasing his value.
Yep. And that realization, that value equation, it wasn't just about his job then. It kind of laid the groundwork for moving beyond a traditional job altogether.
Which sounds like it leads naturally towards, entrepreneurship. Was there a specific moment, a breaking point, that made him actually leave his carpentry job?
There was. He describes a really difficult time where his manager started feeling threatened by his drive and self-improvement.
Oh, dear. That happens.
Yeah, and it apparently led to bullying. That experience, combined with looking at the numbers, made him realize that that particular job, well, it was never going to let him retire early. The standard retirement age was 67 then, possibly higher now.
Right, a long way off.
A very long way off. It just became crystal clear that if he wanted that freedom he was chasing, he'd have to build his own path. Sticking around wasn't the answer.
So he decided to make a leap, following his passion, right, into that radio control model shop.
Yeah, he calls it following his dreams. He went to work in a model shop, something he was genuinely passionate about. And he didn't just work there. He describes himself as being like a sponge.
Soaking it all up.
Soaking up every bit of experience, is how he puts it. Learning the business inside out, customers, operations, everything.
Okay, preparing himself.
Exactly. And eventually he felt ready. He took out a bank loan and bought his own model shop.
Wow, that's a big step.
Huge. And he tells this vivid story about his first day as the owner, opening the till and seeing the most money I'd ever seen in person.
Must have been a moment.
He said that really drove home the potential of being his own boss, of creating value directly. It really motivated him to think bigger, to scale.
And that leads to another insight he shares, doesn't it, about scale?
Yes.
Yeah.
He says, basically, if you want to do the same and even retire early, then you need to deliver value on a mass scale.
Mass scale. What does he mean by that, practically? How can someone listening achieve that?
Well, he means simply trading your time for money, like in a normal job, has a built-in limit. There are only so many hours in a day. To really break free and accelerate that journey to freedom, you need to find ways to impact or serve a much larger number of people. His suggestion for most people, start a side hustle.
Okay, something on the side of your main job.
Yeah, use a skill you have or a passion and build something small. Then potentially grow that into a proper business that can reach many customers at once.
Got it. Leverage your value more broadly.
Exactly. And this naturally leads into the next big piece, passive income. He calls it an amazing thing.
Right, the dream. Make money while you sleep. He mentioned his first rental payment being a big moment.
Yeah, that was a key milestone for him. But he's quick to point out passive income isn't just about real estate, although that's where he started.
What else counts?
He mentions things like dividend stocks, owning shares in companies like Pepsi or McDonald's that pay out a portion of their profits to shareholders.
Okay.
Or even things like staking crypto, where you lock up your cryptocurrency to help secure the network and earn rewards in return.
Interesting. So various avenues.
Lots of options. But the key point he makes is that true passive income usually requires significant effort up front, either money or time up front, to build or set up.
Right. It doesn't just appear out of thin air.
No. But once it is set up, the beauty is it can potentially pay you for years to come, generating income without you needing to actively work for it every day.
Okay, so building assets that generate income makes sense.
Yeah.
Now, one last piece he touches on is risk. right? Calculated risk in investing.
Yes. After he had his business established and things were more stable, he decided to take a bit of a flyer. He put $5,000 into some individual stocks. He called it fun money.
Okay, money he could afford to lose, presumably.
That's the key point he emphasizes. But then something pretty wild happened. That $5,000 turned into $50,000 in just a few days.
Whoa. Seriously?
Yeah, pretty dramatic. But what's important here is his perspective on it.
Which is?
He stresses the importance of having that safety net of cash and a secure income first. He is absolutely not saying go out and gamble recklessly.
Right, context is crucial.
It's crucial. His point is more that sometimes within a well-thought-out financial plan, taking a calculated risk, especially with money you genuinely wouldn't miss if it vanished, can sometimes pay off significantly. And he admits it can be quite exciting. It's about intelligent risk management, not just blind luck.
Okay, so bringing this all together then. For you, listening to this, Mark Kilberry's journey seems to boil down to a few really core ideas, doesn't it?
It really does.
First, that big mindset shift. Thinking about freedom right now, not just retirement, way off in the future.
Yeah, making it immediate and desirable.
Then, getting super diligent about tracking your finances, setting those clear goals like the freedom figure, making it concrete.
Absolutely essential. Then tackling debt strategically, like with that debt avalanche method.
Right.
Not letting interest eat away at your progress.
Right, and consistently investing for the long haul, understanding compound growth.
Plus, that crucial bit about understanding your value in the market and actively working to increase it. Not just working harder, but working smarter, providing more value.
And finally, exploring entrepreneurship. Maybe starting with a side hustle and aiming to build those passive income streams.
Exactly. It's a pretty comprehensive roadmap, really. Moving from just trading time for money to actually building wealth and freedom.
So maybe the final thought to leave everyone with is this. If freedom is the real goal, not just waiting for some official retirement age, how might actually calculating your personal freedom figure today and then working backward from that number, instead of just counting forward to 65 or 67, how might that fundamentally change the choices you make tomorrow?
That's a powerful question. Working backward from freedom, it could really change everything about your financial path, couldn't it?